Hey guys, Sean Hammond with PremierGuitar.com. We are at Winter NAMM 2019 in Anaheim, California. This is our very first video of the show. I don't even know if it'll be the first one you see, but whatever. If we're rusty, that's why. This is Andrew Barta, main man at Tech 21 for 30 years now. It's your anniversary, right?
That's right, 89. We started.
Congrats.
Thank you.
So
I know I don't look 30, but...
So this is an exciting show for you guys because as John here hinted at with his Vital Signs riff, you guys have a new Geddy Lee preamp pedal, the YYZ I think it's called?
Yes, YYZ. And it came about, Geddy doesn't use pedals, but everybody else does.
Right.
So we've been talking with Geddy, and they warmed up to the idea to squeeze all that stuff we put in his rack into like a pedal format.
Right, because his signature preamp, the 2112, came out, what, a year and a half ago, too?
2 years, I would say 2 years. But obviously we've been working with Geddy for way longer than that, probably 20 years, you know. And he's been using different products that we make because he was able to get the sounds he wants directly. He doesn't want to have amps on stage. It's in-ear monitors. So he's been one of the pioneers of bass players going directly.
And his 2112 rack preamp, it's pretty complicated, right? It's has some unusual connections that like he wanted specifically because of his unusual monitoring process, right?
That's right. It's very unique, but it actually is not as complicated as you would think because we squeezed a lot of things into that. He had a whole rack full of gear. And some things we eliminated because he hadn't used it anymore. But some things, you know, we just kept the functions that he's using, you know, like some preamps or compressors or whatever. Actually, he didn't even use compressors, but in the end, he had it in the rack. And we were like, okay, how you set it and all that is not set. It's just bypassed, you know. So he shied away from compressors because he's very dynamic player, you know. So he doesn't want, you know, the compressor to squash his sound. However, when you have like an amp simulation does a similar, like kind of compresses, but in a different way, more like with a harmonic compression. And that's what he got.
Kind of like a tube amp.
Exactly.
So the YYZ pedal simplifies a lot of that. Which features of the rack does it have, and does it have other stuff that's not in the rack?
Right. The rack actually has a switch also for 2 inputs because he has a dual band wireless. So if he changes basses, you know, all they have to do is just, change the AB switch. On the pedal, it was not necessary.
Okay, so the pedal, tell us about the features. We run through them on the front panel here.
Okay. It's very simple. The first channel, because it's basically a drive, low, mid, and high. One new feature we introduced is called the tight switch, because what happens is a lot of time that people have like different basses, maybe have much more low end, it becomes a little bit buzzy and fuzzy. And the tight switch does exactly that. It tightens up the sound. So if they don't happen to have jazz bass, which normally what Geddy uses, then they can alter the sound. And they were actually very happy with it, even with the jazz basses, give you some other textures. So that's something new we introduced on this pedal. However, there is also a deep, you can mix between the deep sound, which is a very clean studio DI sound, and a driven sound, which is coming from this preamp. And it gives you a mixture. Now, on the rack mount is 2 independent channels. So the actual sound man, the house guy, is the one who's going to do the final mix, because on stage, you don't know what sounds better out there for the audience. So obviously with a band as big as Rush, you have several people working on the sound. So they make the final decision. So Geddy sends 2 different sounds to the board, and then they make the final mix. On this one, since it's a pedal, you make your own mix, you know, how much of the dirty.
So it's 1 input, 1 output, but you can blend sort
exactly
of
the 2 channels because you break it apart.
Okay. Do you want to show us a couple different settings, and we'll have John play something else?
Well, we started out with the slightly dirty sound, but then you can go total clean.
That's the deep.
That's the clean, but it has a really nice low bottom. This has a built-in curve, which is Geddy's curve. Okay, this comes from them. This is what they wanted as a clean sound. And then when you go to the drive with the tight.
That's with tight off now.
Tight off, and everything is flat and clean up. It's still a little bit driven.
Now
Hold on. I was going the wrong way. See, you turn the drive down. Now, that's like the clean. So this is a very good starting point. It gives you a very warm sound. Even though it's kind of flat, but it's still running through our tube emulation. So it gives you that warmth of the bass, and it's also on the very peaks, it's gonna cut off the peaks just like a tube amp. It basically clips it, but not in a harsh way.
And we're hearing it through the cab simulator DI output on this cab here, right?
That's right. We're running, this is a new product for us. It's called the Power Engine Deluxe, Deuce Deluxe. The Deuce is for 200 watts. It's a 200 watt amp, and it says an XLR out on it. So we're running into it with a 1/4" so we can hear it. Right. But what goes to the camera is out of the XLR, so you get the direct sound.
Okay. Now, one question before we go to the next product is the EQ active or parametric or passive or?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because on his rack, we have a parametric EQ active. On this one, we do not have the parametric because it's preset to, to his sound.
To simplify it, you just preset that inside.
But all the EQs are active. We always use active EQs because it gives you a much bigger sweep. A passive EQ, like in a tube amp, gives you a 6 dB cut only. Our EQs...
That's why when it was straight up, you said it's flat.
Flat, exactly. On tube amps, it's usually you have to crank it up to get flat. And it gives you like a plus minus 15, 16 dB booster cut.
Nice. How much is the YYZ going for? $199?
Yeah.
And the cab?
How much is the cab?
$449. Street? Street? Okay, cool. Why don't we unplug and we'll go hear the next thing that you guys brought. All right, guys, so we've switched positions over to look at the Paul Lander Signature Fly Rig. This came out a couple months ago, Andrew, right?
Yeah, just recently, yep.
Haven't brought it to a show yet. So tell us about this. This is Paul Landers from Rammstein.
Right. He's another artist we've been working for 15, 20 years. He used our rack mount, and then he started to use one of our pedals, but he always went direct because his partner, the other guitar player, always uses tube amp. So the
one like contrasting sounds.
Exactly, contrasting sound. Rammstein is really well known for the really tight, strong industrial power metal sound, and that's how they get it. That's the secret.
Did you have to do any special stuff to like fireproof the pedal because of all the pyrotechnics and stuff on stage?
They all fireproof because they all metal construction. The only thing maybe you're going to melt off some of the knobs, but it's still going to work.
Okay, so tell us about the different effects in it.
Yes. Well, the main thing is really a distortion. I don't even call that effect. And Paul was kind enough to call it the best distortion he knows of, because he's been using this for a long time and it's really in your face, and we use analog technology. There is no latency whatsoever. So when you play
analog,
what's that?
It's all analog distortion.
Absolutely, analog distortion, and even the speaker simulation is analog. So there is no latency, not even 1 or 2 milliseconds, it's zero latency. So when he plays, it's really tight, it's really in your face.
Now, is the distortion circuit based on what he previously used, or was it custom tailored to him?
It's based on what we've been making forever, the SansAmp technology.
Like the original pedal?
It's not the original, the second one, the GT2.
Okay.
That's his favorite pedal. And as a matter of fact, it's funny enough that there is slight variations when you make a product like a Marshall amp, for example, throughout like 20 years. They have slight variation, even if you make the same exact product, because your suppliers who make the transformers.
The variances in the components, right, and all that.
So you have different sounds. Same with Stratocasters. Different years they have different sound. So we experienced the same issue with our pedals. And he had like a particular GT2, so we needed to copy exactly that because he wanted to have the exact sound, which we did, but it took a while to tweak it, to get it right, and then finally we did. But he didn't want to deviate from that because he knew that works for him. And here's another interesting thing too, that you can have a really good sound when you play, it sounds great, but when you play with the whole band, it doesn't work anymore. So he had a sound that they worked out for many years, that it's worked with the band. So
the sound of the band evolved, and he needed a tighter niche or something, EQ.
Well, he needed to keep that sound, so he kept taking this new pedal, the prototypes, down to rehearsals to play with the band, because when you just play it by yourself, you cannot judge it. You have to judge it in the context of the band. So we did that, and it was actually a very tedious and long process. But
did you go to the rehearsals with him?
No, it's in Berlin, so it's a little bit too far for us to keep flying back and forth. But we kept in contact and had Skype, discussions or emails, and so eventually we worked it out. Yeah.
Okay, so he found his favorite setting, and you guys kind of tweaked.
Yeah.
Okay, what other effects does it have? It has boost.
Here's the other thing. What we never did before, we emulated a solid state amp, because he told us that he's using, for clean sounds, he's using Roland jazz cores, and he has a compressor pedal in front of it. So we did our study, and we created channel Wasser. Wasser is water for German, and channel 2 is, how do you pronounce, Feuer, which is fire. Okay, so we created channel 1, and let's hear that. This is with a slight breakup. You can turn it off. So this is a compressed solid state amp.
So this is the Wasser.
Yeah. And then you can switch. Now the other thing we added for his request, he wanted to have a vibrato. Okay, he didn't want to have a chorus. He wanted to have some flanger or something. So this is a very tasteful. It's almost like a cross between like a roto vibe and what would you call this? Like
a fast phaser.
Like a phaser, kind of a phasering. And then you can change the speed.
Tap tempo.
Just tap tempo, yeah.
Now, are there memory presets?
No. Everything is analog, no memory, no.
It's just like 4 different pedals, basically.
That's right. We also have a delay in it, and headphone amp. We have a boost. Yeah, he had another idea. He wanted to have a negative boost. So I was like, what is negative boost? And then he says basically that you can cut. So. But everybody thinking about, like, there's a foot switch, you step on it, it's a boost. Right. So he said that sometimes there are like phrases and passages that I need to cut back the level. So we made the boost that you can go either plus or minus. And we also put in like a little bit of mid-range bump, because a lot of metal tones are scooped out. That's how you get the metal tone. But when you play lead or you play a couple of phrases, that scooped out sound, you just get lost. So the boost has built-in, we call it punch. So when you hit the punch, it gives you a little bit of a mid-range boost, so it's like more beefy. It doesn't get lost in the context of the band.
Should we hear that and maybe the delay too?
Sure. Yeah, why don't you switch over? So that's without the boost. It's like you get that punch through.
And then there's the delay, digital delay, and how much?
It is a technology we use that emulates a tape delay. Okay, so what it does is like it's smoother on the top. A lot of digital delays has a very harsh top end. So this one has a nice roll off like a tape echo would.
How much delay time?
It goes up to about 3/4 of a second. You can hear the repeats get progressively darker. And we also have an ambience in it. We called it ambience because what he told us, he didn't want to have reverb. He also goes direct with in-ear monitors, so he just wanted to have that feel of a room, that the ambience of the room, so it's not totally dead.
So it is reverb, it's just so minimal that you almost don't detect it.
Exactly. It just gives you like a spaciousness like in a room, because if they need like reverb, the board has everything they want, but for his in-ear, he just wanted to have like a very comfortable sound.
What's that sound like?
Oh yeah, it's always on. So this is turned off. It's hard to hear it here because
It kind of just makes it a little more full, huh?
That's right.
All right, Andrew, thanks for showing us the YYZ pedal and the new Paul Anders fly rig. I think you said before we were rolling that the fly rig is 329 Street, right?
That's right.
And we got the price on the YYZ. You wanted to mention something real quick about a couple other fly rigs that have been updated, right? The Richie Kotzen.
Richie Kotzen has some new features in it. It's also 329 Street, and we put in a tuner, direct out XLR. A lot of requests, mostly from customers, but Richie also had some additions. We have a Leslie in it, so you can use it. So it's really nice, yeah.
Okay. And then is there one other one that's...
Yes. Our standard fly rig we've been making from the beginning is also got an update and has many new features in it. Namely, the effects loop was the most requested feature, so we put the effects loop in it, and many other new features.
Cool. Is that also 329?
No, it's actually cheaper because we don't have an artist endorsing it, so that one is 199.
Cool.
Oh, 299.
299? 299.
See, that price
No
is
worries.
not my thing.
He just designs the stuff,
Everybody's
guys.
gonna come and try to buy it for 199, right?
Andrew, why don't you tell them where to go online to find out about all this and all the other stuff you guys do?
Come to our website. It's Tech21 NYC. Don't forget the NYC.com.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, guys. I'm Sean Hammond for PremierGuitar.com.